Welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast. In these sessions, we meet the most amazing and interesting people. We learn about their passions, their business models, cool new technologies, and of course, their lessons on personal growth. I hope you enjoy. In this Boardroom Sessions podcast, we meet one of my personal heroes, Ching. He retired from the Huntington Beach Lifeguards after a 35-year career. We smash the stereotype of what a lifeguard is. We talk about his best days and worst days on the water. We talk about what it is to be a boat operator, marine safety officer, captain, how to interface with the public, and what goes into the life of a lifeguard. So hope you enjoy. Ching, welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast.
Thank you so much. What an honor.
Man, this is a long time coming, and I know a lot of people are wondering why a career lifeguard on the Boardroom Sessions podcast. But why don't you tell us a little bit about how you ended your career, your last position, and how long you were there?
I worked for the city of Huntington Beach for 35 years. I ended up as a captain in charge of the rescue boat program, which was my dream spot down at the dock. So that was really nice. And yeah, I just decided to call it quits. I had a good career. It was fun.
So you and I have an opportunity to know each other from Open Water, which is a philanthropy we work with, Danny Nichols' organization and others that serves the veterans and first responder space, where we offer what we call trauma therapy and other things to help build waterman relationships and help those folks deal with things that they might be stressed and other things that they work on in their life. And we just provide some support. And so you and I have had a chance to meet there. And I'm going to get into it a little bit more, but I've had a huge respect for what you do and what you've done. This kind of is a gift to my 17-year-old self, if you will. So when I was 17, I was a seasonal lifeguard in a little town north of LA called Port Hueneme. And I thought that the full-time lifeguards and, more importantly, the boat operators was the pinnacle in life. I thought that would have been the most important, the coolest job ever to have. And to actually have met one and know one well is incredible. And so I'm looking forward to sharing your story there. And I also want to bust one of the big myths that's out there that I think there's a stereotype of a lifeguard. And there's an unbelievable level of professionalism that I've gotten to see and know. And I don't think most people have an idea of what that is. So I want to make sure that we bust that here as well. So other than hanging out with myself and a whole bunch of other water people on Wednesday nights doing water workouts and what we call waterlogged, playing with weights on the bottom and things of that nature, why don't you give us a little idea of what it is that you do today as a water guy and how life in retirement has been?
Okay. Well, first of all, for all your listeners probably don't know, Mike's a beast in the pool. And he'll probably never say that, but you're underwater doing rock runs and I look over and I see him charging 50 yards at a time underwater, and it's just pretty humbling. So anyway, I retired. I pretty much everything revolves around the beach for me. So whether it's even just going for a walk or just jumping in for a body surf or I still surf, but I just it all started for me, I think, in Hawaii. Honestly, my family's from Hawaii. They immigrated to the islands about 1850, so I got some strong roots over there. But I remember going there as a kid and just when third, fourth grade and falling in love with the ocean.
Where in Hawaii?
On Oahu. In fact, we just came back from a trip. My grandmother just turned 110, so we went over there for a big celebration.
110?
110. My grandma, Helen, was born in 1913 in Waikiki. Young mom during Pearl Harbor. My dad's from Hawaii. I still have a ton of relatives over there. I feel really comfortable in Hawaii, being Hapa. And but I think that's kind of where it all started. I mean, Hawaii is ridiculous. The water's 75. It's clear. There's fish. They couldn't get me out of the water. But the interesting thing about that is as soon as we came home, it's a different story here, right? And I was all in, though. I'm like, let's go. My dad take me down to the beach, and it was freezing. It's shore breaky. It's not really clear marine layer. It's a little different story. So, but it took a while, but when you're 10 years old. It's a little different now, but I think I couldn't shake it. So I just adapted, right? But every year we would go back to Hawaii and I'd be like, oh yeah, this is where it's at.
Yeah. And so, how did you get into lifeguarding?
So when we came back from Hawaii, we'd spend summers there. I'd come home. I'd be like, I want to surf. I want to surf. I want to surf. My dad was a surfer and he would take me surfing. Um, and at some point being the smart man that he is, he's like, you got to learn how to swim and be water safe and learn about the ocean. So we came across the junior guard program, and this is
And we may call that, you may hear the acronym as we talk here called JGs. That means junior guards. And that's a rite of passage for most kids that grow up in Huntington Beach and Newport Beach and other Southern California beach towns. But you start it with like what age?
9 years old. And Huntington Beach has one of the best junior guard programs in the world. And there's some other good ones too, Newport, Cal State, up and down the coast in Southern California, but Huntington was the first one. And this was in like the mid 70s when I went, and it had started way before that. But yeah, so I went to junior guards. I was scared. Dude, it's scary. A 9-year-old kid swimming around the pier is no joke.
And the primary reason for that was so that you could get water safe?
I think my dad just wanted me to be water safe, learn about waves, learn about rip currents, learn about the ocean. And, I wanted to go surfing by myself. I wanted to ride my bike down to river and mag. And my parents were, I was only in like 5th grade.
Yeah.
So I think there was a thing where it was like, okay, well, once you do one summer of junior guards and you show us you can, then maybe we'll think about you riding your bike to the beach. So I started doing junior guards. I was scared. It was hard. But I eventually, like after a couple years, I was pretty good at it.
So a couple years of summers, you did junior guards, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so the program lasts for several weeks during summer.
8 weeks during the summer.
And you learn water safety. You have to jump off the pier. Back in the day, you used to jump off the boat and do like boat swims and things of that nature. And so there's a lot of rite of passages that kids get to feel, kind of like a camp experience as well.
Every day in the summer, just swimming and doing push-ups, and it's changed a lot over the years, and it was competition focused back then too. So it was working out. You were working out as a young kid at the beach, and I got pretty good at it. Then, I don't know if we're going to segue into this, but as I got a little older, I saw how the operation worked down there, and I'm like, well, you can get paid to work here. And I was kind of like, that seems pretty cool.
What a cool job. Right?
Yeah, what a cool job. Like the pay was pretty good. Basically, you get to work out and you get to be at the beach all day. I already loved the beach, so I was like, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And then there is a small group of kids in the junior guard program called the captains. And they're like the 15, 16-year-olds who are interested in like maybe lifeguarding. And once you get into the captains, it's a lot of working out, and you start to learn about the actual career of lifeguarding. You get to work in the towers with the lifeguards, and you get to ride in the truck and kind of see how it works.
What a very smart thing for the city of Huntington Beach and the other departments is because it's a feeder system. They're building a complete feeder system for what was going on there. And I just want to touch on the competitive part. There are kids that come out of each one of the groups that get the cream rises to the crop, and then those kids will go compete against other cities and other towns, and then they'll have regionals and state regionals, and it gets to be a very big thing. And then all of a sudden you start to see your next Olympic swimmers coming out of the top of these groups.
Yeah,
and
some of them are real fast, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think of Jay Larson's daughter, who went on to Lily.
Yeah.
Lily played water polo and is playing water polo right now at college level, and she's one incredible athlete. But in the junior guard program, she was one of the state champs, and so she worked her way through all of those different deals. So very, very competitive. It gets for those that want to be competitive, but if not, it's a great feeder system for them.
Yeah, it's a farm league, and one little factoid that not a lot of people know is Huntington City Beach has produced 2 national USLA champions. Blaine Morgan for the men's, he's a captain at OCFA, I believe, and Mika Burden for the women. So we had national individual champions that came from Huntington,
Wow, the
like the
best.
best lifeguard competitor in the nation,
Wow.
2 times, men and women. It's pretty awesome.
That is awesome. So you were in JGs and you worked your way up to be a captain.
Yep. And then I saw them were, I figured out that there were, we call them permanents, full-time lifeguards working, driving the truck, driving the boat. And pretty much like around 17 or 18 years old, I was like, I want to be a marine safety officer. 100% focused. I wasn't really sure how to get there because there's lots of people that want to do it. But that was my goal. And
At what age? 16?
I mean, 16, I wanted to be a tower guard. I probably didn't really know that there was such a thing as a perm.
Uh-huh.
But around 18, I figured it out. And I knew there was guys that worked there year round. They got paid pretty well. And of course, they worked at the beach. So I think I'm going to say 18 is when I figured out that I wanted to be a marine safety officer. They don't call that position that anymore. It's called, I don't even know what it's called. Marine safety captain is what I was. But
Okay.
yeah, so full-time lifeguard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So full-time lifeguard, and then so you worked your way through the towers and got into a full-time lifeguard, and
Yeah, everybody starts out in the towers. That's where all the hard work gets done. I remember my first summer asking the unit operator, still remember his name, Dan Hoffman. I believe he's a pilot. I just asked him straight up, how do you promote here? Like, what do I do? I was
eager.
Yeah, well, he looked at me and he just said, get your EMT. That's
Your
all
emergency medical technician.
right. And so basically to promote to any kind of supervisory level, even just the first level, you have to have your EMT. And so I was at Orange Coast College. I looked in the list. They had an EMT course. I signed up and I got, so that was the first thing I did. And then,
So with an EMT, for those that don't know, what kind of level of first aid and help do you learn there?
it's basically you learn everything about first responder basic life support. So CPR, AED, airways, uh, illnesses, fractures, all that kind of stuff. And, it's not even close to being a paramedic, but it's just below paramedic. So there's EMTs in the fire department. All the truck guys are EMTs. And it's the basic level that you need to have for any kind of first responder, ambulance operators. And, it's a full semester course and it goes into depth, but a lot of that stuff we don't really see in the field. Like you don't really come across people with congestive heart failure at the beach, but you learn about that stuff. And so it all comes together. So for basic life support.
Yeah. And so then you got your EMT.
Got my EMT, and I just so happened at that time I call it cycles at the beach. Sometimes there's a lot of promotions within a short amount of time because people leave or whatever. And sometimes it's a long amount of time. It just so happened when I was a second year guard, there was a need for people. And so my third summer I was promoted to senior guard and I was like already driving the truck, which seems crazy to me, and that was just game on from there. Cause so
the first step is junior guards, right? And that's like voluntary and you actually pay money to go and get in, right? Then if you can get hired as a guard, you start in the tower, right? And then from the tower, the next job on top of that is getting an EMT and then you get into the truck.
Well, in between the truck would be like, we used to call them lifeguard twos. That would be the guy in Tower Zero, the iconic tower on the pier.
Okay.
And then shotgun position would be the guy sitting in the truck with the driver. And then after that would be, we called it senior guard or lifeguard 3. And then that's driving the truck, dispatcher, the supervisor up in Tower Zero, deckhand. Then there's a lot of different layers, but now there's a position called OLS, I think it's called, or Ocean Lifeguard Specialist. It's like a 3/4 position. They're truck drivers, and then the permanents. So there's kind of a lot of layers, and when you go down to the beach and you look at what's going on, sometimes it's hard to tell who's who or what's what. And some people will come right up to the tower and say like, "Oh, you must be the, the head guy." And the 17-year-old kid's like, "I just started like yesterday," So it's just complicated, but basically it's a pyramid hierarchy with a chief, and then battalion chiefs, and then captains, and then all the way down to the tower guards.
And is it in Huntington Beach? Is it related to the fire department?
It is now. So the Marine Safety Division is a division of the fire department. It kind of is structured like the fire department, although it's obviously different of the way what we do. But yeah, so that was a most marine safety divisions on the coast of California are part of the fire department now. There's only one or two that aren't, and I think Laguna Beach is their own lifeguard department. But
Okay.
we're a division of the fire department,
Marine Safety Department or something like that.
Marine Safety Division.
Yeah, yeah. And so, when did you make a jump into the boat operations?
Well, so I mean, there was a long time between when I became like a lifeguard 3 until I got hired full time. And then
And so let's talk about that for a second, because that's the holy grail, right? That's when
yeah.
I spent 6 summers, just to give everybody a background here, 6 summers as a ocean lifeguard in a tower. We didn't have a boat in my little town, so there was no pathway there. But there were only a handful of full-time positions available for a lifeguard, and they were coveted, and they were lifers that were in those jobs because it's a great job. And so there were a lot of folks there that they weren't leaving in that deal. So there's a jump. There's a lot of folks that are seasonal that want to be a full-time lifeguard.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different than police and fire because those guys can kind of test at different departments at the same time. But lifeguarding is a little bit more in-house. And so like if I was a in-house guy, I couldn't just take the permanent test over at Newport because there's 10 guys at Newport waiting in line too. So it's a little bit different in that regard. But and one of the bummers was that there was a recession in 1992, I think it was. And unfortunately, there was no hiring between 91 and 98. So there was a big time where I was like working as a seasonal in the summer, and then there wasn't much to do. So that I actually did a bunch of ski patrol in between 91 and 98. But I forgot where were we going with
We were
that?
going with how did you work your way into the boat operator?
So once
So wait, I don't want to touch base on that real quick. So if you guys are getting a look into why I like this guy, right? He's the kind of guy who was a seasonal lifeguard and then a ski patrol in the winter. What a great life you were living, Eric.
Yeah, ski patrol was awesome, and the basis for ski patrol was EMT basically. And like I was looking for money, like hey, I don't have any money. My friend was like working up there. He's like, you should come. You already have your EMT. I'm like, I don't know if I can ski good enough, but I figured it out. And talk about a tough job. There's a lot of shoveling and but you're out on the hill every day. 150 ski days a year is pretty killer. But anyway, um, so after I got hired on full time, this was back in the late 90s. So it's a little different then than it is now. But of course, I wanted to be right on the boat, but there was already guys driving the boat. And it's like, they were like, no. But you basically slowly work your way up. And if there's an opening or a chance for training, that's the big thing is you got to get the training in. And so I would train it as much as I could. Like, hey, can you teach me how to dock the boat, or can you teach me how the thing runs? Or
Eager beaver. Learning how to ask for the promotion, learning how to ask for what's next, right? Getting the EMT down, finding out what you needed to do next to get into the boat. There's not an opening right now. Just chill out, young man. And so you're like, well, what can I do now to learn lessons and learn skills that will put me in place to get that when it's available?
yeah, because I mean, nobody comes to you and tells you like, because they don't know what your focus is anyway, right? And they're not going to tell you how to do it. You have to kind of know where you want to go, and then you got to figure out the steps to get there. And so, I hate to say it, but back in the day, nobody helped you. It's different. It is different now where we have it all written down and we say like, well, what do you want to do? These are the different paths. But back then you really had to just kind of like not strike out on your own. The information was there, but you just had to ask the right person. And sometimes they would say no, right?
Yeah.
But every time I got the chance, I swam out to the boat too on my breaks. Or I remember one summer I was a dispatcher, and like I was pretty good at dispatching. It's a multitasking thing, but it's kind of a lame job at the beach, right? You're sitting
You're in the
inside.
headquarters.
Yeah,
Inside.
it's a super important job because it runs the whole thing. But I remember every time I had a break, I would just run out the door, grab my fins, and ask, on the, hey, can I swim out? And I'd swim out to the boat. And even if you just went out to the boat and sat there and drove around with them for a while and just didn't say anything, you obviously learned something every time. And so that was probably the first time I was out on the boat. There's this weird feeling on the boat when they pin it and you go to a call. It's exhilarating. I mean,
Pin it. You mean like
let's
hit the
go.
gas?
Yeah, hit the gas. We run 29-foot crystal liners, twin inboards. They're really fast. They're maneuverable.
What size engines?
Right now they're like 8.2 liters, but they did 350. I don't know all the
They're
old
big
gas engines.
fast gas engines. And so I don't know how many people have seen the boats out here in Southern California, but we have a make of boat that most of the lifeguard boats across the coast here use, and they're called a crystalliner.
Yep, made in Costa Mesa, California.
Yeah, and they're very heavy. They're very full of wood and lots of fiberglass, and that heaviness and the two engines on them make them cut through the water like no other boat that's on the water. Their reverence that the lifeguards have, that you guys have for those crystal liners is unbelievable.
Yeah, my boat that I ended my career with was a 1982 hull. I mean, the things last forever. But just being out on the boat and then going to, it's fun. It's fast. Being on the water going 30 miles an hour doesn't sound very fast, but right on the surf line, going fast, it was really, I was like, this is what I want to do, or this is where I want to be. I didn't know if I was ever going to get there. Mm-hmm. You might not, it might be just the deckhand or whatever, but I think it always eventually works out.
Especially if you're that eager. If you're the guy who's making it inroads, you're going to at least put yourself on the map with everybody that's where you're heading.
Yeah, and you do kind of have to wait your turn. That's one of the bummers, but wait your turn, rookie.
And so you finally made your way onto an operation on the boat?
Yeah, in fact, I was driving the boat pretty soon after I got hired as a full-timer, but that's a whole nother story. The way they kind of changed the schedule, and it was leaning towards more like, hey, let's train every permanent how to drive the boat. That way our schedule will be way more flexible, instead of just having like one or two guys that were the guys and no one else could do it. It was more like, let's train everybody. So I had the opportunity in 2000, which was only 2 years into my permanent career, that I got a boat schedule, and that lasted for a couple summers. And then I kind of went off the boats after that. It kind of switched back, but then I ended my last 10 or 15 years on the boat.
So you start on the boat as a deckhand?
Yeah. I started as a deckhand. I actually didn't work deckhand that much, but yeah, deckhand. That's the guy who does everything on the boat. It's super important to have a good deckhand. He's the guy diving off the back, making rescues. He's the guy hooking up the tow line. He's the guy polishing and shining the stainless. He's the guy checking out the boat in the morning, putting the boat away in the evening. When you're the boat operator, like I got to be at the end, I pretty much stand at the helm and make sure we don't get, washed ashore. But start out as a deckhand, learn a ton, and then hopefully move up to operating.
Yep. And so when you moved up to operating, you become a boat captain?
Yeah, that's the title, captain. Yep.
But I mean, in the regards to, did you get a captain's license? Did you go through some formal certification process to learn how to be on a boat, to learn the mechanics, to learn, how to operate a boat in the ocean to the level of that professional standard?
There's a few classes put on by Cal Maritime, but they're not really, there's really no classes or training outside of our division for surf line ops. We do our own training. And so you learn how to put the boat on the surf line and pick up victims, drop off your deckhand. We learned that in-house. I thought it was probably a good idea to get my captain's license, so I went and got my captain's license outside of work. But you don't need to have your Coast Guard captain's license to be a boat operator. We have our own checkoff system and our own teaching for that.
And that's going to be super important because you're going in and out of the surf. And so I want to make sure people understand that, don't think it through here, or maybe I've not been exposed to Huntington Beach, but Huntington Beach in particular, along the beaches here in Southern California, has a very long, what we would call surf line. So the waves break out pretty far into the ocean, and then white cap rollers all the way through to the beach. So it's not as if the waves break right up and on the beach. There's a long, what we call surf line. And so the boats are there to help pull victims out of the water that are out in rip currents, out in the surf line, or outside the surf line. And so the boats are operating in and around big waves. So tell me, I've seen some of the most amazing, you know, scenes where the boat's coming in and you're gunning it so that you can get the nose up in the air to actually get enough momentum to go over 8, 10 or more foot wave.
Yeah, that's the scary part, and that's the part that takes a little bit of training and work. But basically, if you're ever at the beach and you see the lifeguard boat come, first of all, there's only really 3 departments that kind of do surf line rescue with boats, and it's Huntington City, Newport City, and Cal State. There's other boat programs, like LA County obviously has a huge Baywatch program, but they don't do surf line work. It's kind of just those 3. But if you're ever at the beach and you see the boat come to a tower for a rescue, you'll see them pull up and back in, stern to the beach, bow out. And we sit like that on the surf line specifically for one reason, and it's to get out of there if a wave comes. But basically, you're trying to sit right on the surf line. It doesn't do any good if you pull 100 yards out the side of the surf line and then you tell your deckhand to go dive off and get somebody. He's way too far away. So the rescues that we would always do would be like the surf would be mid or big and the rips were pulling strong. Swimmers or bodyboarders get caught in rip currents and they're basically coming out to us. If the lifeguard in the tower is a little late or the rip is really strong, they're basically coming from shore and they're chasing the person down. And my big thing I would always say to my deckhand was like, get ready. Here they come. Here they come. They're coming to us because the rip currents are pulling out and we're sitting on the surf line. They're closing, the victim is closing the distance to you. And so when there's a break in the surf, you can back the boat in, back it in, back it in, back it in. And then I would tell my guy, he'd be on the back in the transom door with his buoy on and his fins on already. And he'd just be waiting, ready, trained, just ready to go. They love it. The deckhands, that's all they want to do, man. Let's go, let's go, let's get wet.
Let's get
That's
wet.
what we train for. And so I'd say, okay, go. Now it's your chance. And he'd dive off the back into a wave if there was one. If not, he just dives and goes, and then
They would dive into the wave if they could, so they would use the momentum of the wave and ride it to the victim.
Yeah, so that's a real awesome technique, and it happens every once in a while when the timing's right. But basically, when a swell comes, the bow of the boat will lift up, and then as the bow comes down the wave, the transom of the boat lifts up. And as the transom lifts up, where the deckhand is standing, he can
Leverage
dive and body and right into a wave. We've had it before. I had one deckhand that was really good at it, and he would come up and be riding the wave, and he'd be able to look to see where the victim was, and he'd ride his buoy or just body surf right to the guy. And sometimes the victims would be just like
startled.
What? Yeah, where did you come from? And then he would tow him to shore, and then he'd have to swim all the way back out, and I'd pick him up. So that's pretty fun.
And how often on a big day when there's lots of rip currents are you pulling people out of the water like that?
Well, the tower guards are pulling people out left and right. You know, on a busy day, we would have maybe like 100 rescues and maybe like 3,000 preventative actions. The boat would have, like, the deckhand might go deckhand off maybe like 5 times is a lot during a day. But we only kind of, we get the real the crazy ones kind of. We don't jump off for just people that are like, inside or whatever.
So the boat's saved for big deals, big rips, big events with multiple people on the rips where the tower guards are going in from one side and you need more help from the outside, or there's some incident where something happened, or maybe a whole group of folks got pulled into a rip.
Yeah,
Right?
like mass rescues, or the boat is a great platform for just visualizing what's going on. So the way that the system works in Huntington is that we use the perimeter defense system. And so anytime a tower goes out into the water, we have a truck or the flanking towers watching what's going on, so that if the guy needs help or there's something else happens, that there's someone watching to back them up. The boat is a really good tool because sometimes, I mean, there's a chance that all the trucks are on calls already. And so the only thing left is the boat. And we can drive. Can you imagine driving a truck from Beach Boulevard to Huntington Street on a Saturday, and then you're driving like 1 mile an hour? It's so crowded. Well, the boat can get from Tower 19 to Tower 9 in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And we back in and our deckhands, shirt off, ready, watching. We're all watching. It's all about watching each other and safety.
Right. Let's give some perspective to the listeners here. So, on a given midsummer, peak summer day, we're talking about upwards of 150,000 people at the beach.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
On a big day. And so, how long is the beach from end to end?
Well, now we have 3.5 miles. We go basically the pier. It's not in the middle, but it's in the middle. And then we go 1 mile south to Beach Boulevard and 2.5 miles north to Bolsa, basically the Tick or Sea Point Avenue. And then
So
we
about 3 miles.
3.5, and then we
3.5.
have another mile at Sunset Beach from
Okay.
Warner to Anderson, which is a whole nother ballgame because it can get real dangerous down there too. But that's like a different operation. And then we have the harbor beaches. So we do have some still water, harbor. We have 5 or 6 spots in the harbor.
So that's quite an operation to be responsible for, and the boat is the last line of defense, the fastest, and coming into the big situations and heading off other boats because there's a lot of boaters that make kooky moves.
Oh, we do a lot of boat rescues. No, we make a lot of boat rescues.
Right. So it's quite an operation. How many people are working on one of those summer days? So 150,000 or so people at the beach, and then on a big day, you've got 50 lifeguards working?
Yes, about 60 probably now, 65 maybe even. And when you add it all up, we're basically open from 6 a.m. till midnight. All the towers, all the relief guards, all the trucks with 2 people in it, 2 boats, 1 in the harbor, 1 out at the beach. The night guards it's and that's per day, 65 people per day, 7 days a week.
That's an operation.
Yeah.
And then I've seen jet skis now into the mix, right? And so there's a guy out on a jet ski when the surf gets big. I've also seen now that there's ATVs, right? So there's the 4-wheel ATVs running back and forth between the towers, not to mention a plethora of trucks. There's a fleet of Toyotas out there.
I would definitely buy a Tacoma if I would needed one. They're insane. I mean, we drive those things 90% in 4-wheel drive, and they just every single day they're solid. But yeah, the skis changed everything too. I mean, you'd have to, I guess in Hawaii they first started doing it, but we've had wave runners in Huntington for I don't even know, 25 years, 20 years. The interesting thing about the skis, you can launch them from the beach in pretty much any conditions, and it only takes one guy, and they can go circles around people. I mean, they're super maneuverable. Obviously, you have to know how to drive it, and when we pull the sled on the back of them, you can pick other lifeguards up, you can drop lifeguards off, you can pick lifeguards and victims up. They're pretty good piece of equipment for sure.
That's fantastic, and so that's quite an operation that's going on here at the beach. I want to give some color and commentary here to how you and I first met. Okay, so when we were working with Open Water, one of the things we do every year, our pinnacle event here, is the channel crossing. So we go from Catalina Island, which is about 26 miles by the way the crow flies, to the coastline. But the route we take, of course, we make it hard on ourselves, is about 33 miles to the beach. And we do a crossing every year. My first crossing with the open water, I got a chance to see you in operations. We were going around the room introducing everybody. There was 50 paddlers, probably another 50 to 60 participants that were here on boat crews and things, helping support all of us. There were 20 or 30 boats, I would say, in the mix there. And Eric, you were in charge of safety operations for the whole outfit, right?
Yeah. I first started taking the lifeguard boat and trying to get involved with the Ben paddle.
Tell them about Ben
Yeah,
Carlson.
Ben Carlson, you know, lifeguard in Newport Beach, deckhand who perished in the line of duty. Shoot, I don't even know. 20, I should know this. I'm sorry. I think it's 2014 or
Yeah.
anyway, they started doing a paddle, fundraiser paddle from Catalina to Newport. I started taking the boat, and I don't know if anybody at the Huntington City is going to listen to this, but I wanted to support that kind of stuff. I used to be a paddleboarder and I did crossings, and they're doing this thing to raise money. So I started taking the boat and meeting the bend paddle halfway across. Then I got to go to the bend paddle a couple times. Then open water started doing their paddle, and it was just a transition, easy. I'm like, we need to be there. This is our wheelhouse. This is what we do. We need to be supporting this paddle. And it took a little bit of, convincing of the higher ups. You just can't take city equipment and just go, But I eventually kind of like asked questions later kind of thing. But I convinced the chief, which is always great to convince the top guy. And then he tells everybody else we're doing this. So I was able to go support, be the safety guy, kind of come up with a plan. Of course, as soon as we say we're going, the battalion chiefs are come up with the EAP, an event action plan. And it's not like 2 pages long. It's like 30 pages long, because you're training and you're planning for all possible incidents. And in a paddle like that, there's lots and lots of things that can go wrong.
And so I'm just going to state that my friends and I, when we were thinking about the crossing, we've done a few with little to no support. And we're knuckleheads. I mean, when we think about it. And so when I heard you give your safety briefing, it smashes all preconceived notions of what lifeguards do, right? Yes, they're tough. Yes, they know how to save people. Yes, they have basic first aid and EMT certifications and things like that. But the level of professionalism that goes into an emergency action plan, the ability to coordinate a bunch of different vessels crossing on a long crossing, the ability to keep in touch with everybody, the ability to anticipate everything from a cardiac arrest and having what supplies you need, where is the device, where's the first aid, when do we pull the plug, when is the event actually over if something goes down. It's just mind-blowing to me, the level of professionalism that goes in. And I wanted to make sure that people thoroughly understand that kind of level that you guys train for. So what goes into an emergency action plan for 50 paddlers coming across the channel?
I basically kind of deconstruct it, and I sit there. I mean, I'm literally sitting in my little office at the dock, and I just get a piece of paper out and I'm like, what could go wrong? And I just write them all down. And then
what are the things that come to mind?
Well, of course, paddler injury, some kind of medical condition, all that stuff is easy when you're on land and it's like, oh, the guy's having a heart attack, and you just got to call 911 and the medics come and they transport him. But in the middle of the channel, when that kind of stuff happens, it's a little bit more difficult. But you could have boat problems, sinking vessel, broken down vessel, weather conditions, fog, rain, wind, boat fire, public boaters driving through the pack, someone getting run over, transport of a patient back to Catalina or back to the mainland or in the helicopter. So basically you kind of...
You didn't mention the one that I think most people are thinking about. What about a shark?
Oh, sharks. Yeah. There's sharks out there.
We don't give it any energy, people. We're
Yeah.
just telling you that you might be thinking that, but we try not to think about those things.
I always tell people I'll just swim over there and poke it in the eye. And they look at me like, are you kidding or not kidding? I'm like, well, kind of both, It's like, what are you going to do? But so yeah, just come up with a plan for every single possible incident that you can think of. Then you go to your next right hand man and you say, what are the things that could happen? And you want to make sure you don't miss anything. You have to ask other people. You're not the end all be all. I might have forgot something. And you ask 5 people and then we put the plan together. And, luckily working there for so long, like I have a contact at the Coast Guard Station LA. I called him up. I'm like, hey, this is what we're doing. He's like, perfect. He put out a security. I talked to Whitney because we had done it before. So we have a plan. And the thing about it is every year the thing goes smooth. Nothing happens. It's awesome. People paddle across, have their journey. It's all good. And the next year we plan for the worst again, because when you're planning for that kind of stuff, you have to be ready for the worst case scenario that might happen 0.1% of the time. But if you're not ready, and this is the same thing you see on the streets with the fire department, police department, Coast Guard, all these military guys, it's all about the training. So like, I don't do CPR every day, and the tower guards don't do CPR every day, but we train with it every week. A tower guard might never do it in his whole career, but the one time that he does, you can't be like, what was that?
Yeah, you gotta be ready.
Yeah, you got to be ready. And so they are. And it's all about training. So like when near the end of my career, when I was taking the boat and my deckhand and we were going out, we were so dialed. And I think that's the part that really draws me to that is the training. And we're so dialed that we're calm, comfortable. We know we can pretty much handle anything that happens. Even if we come across a thing that we've never seen before, it's okay. We're gonna kill it. We're gonna do good.
Yeah.
And that's all about the training.
Well, we sure feel safe out there knowing that you're running the deal. And it's something that you just don't think about, but you take for granted. I think a lot of folks don't understand really what's going on with the lifeguards, and so it's super good to make sure that we're taking a look at and understanding the level of professionalism that's there. I've had a chance to experience it, and so I'm glad we're sharing this. Speaking of our friend Whitney, who's one of the toughest individual persons I've ever met in my entire life, cross-trained in every athletic space. I think I saw her the other day on a paddle. It blew my mind. At any rate, she asked me to ask you a question. Asked 2 questions, actually. And when I said we were going to have this conversation, she wants to know what your best day on the water was and what your worst day on the water was.
Worst day for sure. I mean, the day we heard Ben was missing. There's a really weird thing with the surf rescue boat. It's just the captain and the deckhand. And a lot of times the deckhand dives off to go save people. And instantly, as soon as he dives off, you're alone. It's this weird feeling. And so you drive the boat out and you keep an eye on your deckhand, and your deckhand swims back out, and you pick him up and you go along your day. And that day we heard that deckhand Ben Carlson was missing from a rescue off the boat. It was just a shocker. I knew right away. I mean, if he's missing, that doesn't happen ever. Doesn't happen. And so I knew that was going to be a bad outcome. And the helplessness, because we're on patrol at Huntington, we can't just like leave and go help. Obviously, people were going to help with the search, but people have to remember whenever an incident happens at the beach is still going along. There's still 100,000 people there. Stuff is still happening. So you have to stay, or you have to have a certain resources go to one incident, and then everybody else has to just keep working as they do, or we're going to have another incident. So that's a helpless feeling when you just can't go. And so that's, no question about the worst day on the water for sure. Best day on the water. God, there's a lot of them, honestly.
Yeah.
This will sound dumb, but like, I can't really think of, all the training we would do in Catalina. Sometimes we'd get to go to Catalina, like beautiful day. Like, Catalina is amazing. it's only 25 miles away. It's the most amazing place. So if we ever got to go there and practice scuba or dive or boat rescue stuff, that was always good. But I just have to just say, like, just a normal good day at the beach with nice weather. So the one thing that people don't understand is most of the time in the afternoon in Huntington in the summer, the wind is up and it's a west wind and it's not super comfortable.
Definitely not on the boat,
No,
right?
everybody thinks the boat is there just you're just chilling and but it's sucky sometimes.
Choppy or
Choppy,
wind
windy,
slash.
rocking around all the time, getting wet. I mean, obviously you're wet, but a big deal. But like being wet all day, cold, it's not always nice. So anytime there was like nice afternoon glass offs and running home to Huntington Harbor from the pier, glassy, ugh, those were the best.
Yeah.
Just drive it. I remember this one time in particular. I don't know if we have time, but it was during the air show a couple years ago. They were going to have a Sammy Hagar concert at the end, and they're all nervous that there was going to be a bunch of boaters that came, and so we had to stay. We were on duty for 14, 16 hours, and we were there, and the concert was like at sundown, and it turned out nobody came. Everyone was on the beach, and it was glassy. And my deckhand and I, we had our food. We put it out. You can never put things out on the boat because it just
It's
gets
too rocky.
it falls over. And we just had like this picnic and we were listening to the music and it was sunset, no wind. It was amazing. Probably one of the days for sure.
Awesome. I knew it was going to be a glassy day that would be the hot because for those of you that think of it like a lake when when it's a lake out there and there's no wind on the surface, that's what we call glass. And so those glassy days on the ocean are amazing for us. And here in Huntington in the afternoon, I think we get out of 365 days, we probably get 300 plus days of wind out of the west in the afternoon. Poor us, but it does create some havoc out there for surf and surfing and the boats and operating on the boats for sure. So at any rate, I'm glad to have you on our side out there. What were some of the lessons that you think that you've learned that you've carried with you through your lifeguard career that have translated into life? One of the things that people don't estimate very often is the interface with the public, right? So you're interfacing with public people on a regular basis, right? Think of people and they're not always the coolest and they're not always nice and they're not always doing rational things. What kind of lessons have you learned about dealing with people?
Well, just remaining calm is the first thing. As soon as you get your ire up, the situation changes. But one thing I do have to say is that, the beach changed a lot in the last 20 years. It's a lot different now. And one of the things I didn't like about my job was the enforcement part of it and the public interaction because things changed. So like we have all these rules down there for kind of a reason, right? There's 100,000 people. You can't just have no rules. It would be total chaos. But so we have all these rules. One of them would just be like, say, like no alcohol. It's not allowed. So we would contact people all the time. It's like, sorry, sir, alcohol's not permitted. And it went from, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I'll pour it out. I'll take it back to my car to, F you. When that's not, that's not fun. It's just not cool. And that changed, and I noticed the interactions with the public changed for the worse a little bit. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still really cool people out there, and there's a lot of cool stuff, especially visitors from other places, and they're just like, this place is amazing. And I always ask them when they say that, I'm like, well, where are you from? Like, why is this place amazing? And sometimes you have to step back a little bit and look at the beach. It is amazing. You could walk down there all day. It's killer. And they're like, oh, we're from, Canada or whatever. It's 0 degrees right now. And that must be amazing too. You could go ski or snowboard but so I always would take into people's perspectives, of what, but one thing I noticed was just, like the locals kind of like disappeared from Huntington. They still surf there, but then they just run up to the parking lot, change and bail. But they used to hang out. In fact, you mentioned Danny Nichols earlier on when I'm way older than him, but I met him at Tower 2 with all the Groms. I saw probably 3 or 4 generations of surfers come up through Huntington.
Groms are what we call little surfer kids.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Well, grommets, I think, is
Grommet.
the original name, and came to 60s, 50s term, whatever. I don't even know what it fully means, but it means young surfing kids. Those little blonde, long-haired kids that do nothing but surf and skateboard all day.
Yeah. And so they used to hang out, and it was more of a vibe, and then it kind of changed. I think downtown changed, and but I think just being professional and not bringing emotion into it when you talk to people, because really you're just you just explain why you're talking to them, what the problem is, and how they can fix it. So the biggest thing I learned is you got to give them an option. Like the same with training young kids. Like you can't just say you're doing it wrong. You say you're doing it wrong, but this is the right way to do it, and you either demonstrate it or you have it written down so they have something to strive for.
Yeah. That's that interacting with the public is got to be a deal. There's a lot of people down there, and not everybody's sane, and there are a lot of drunk people running around. We have a state beach right next to it, and there's fire pits in the city area as well. So people feel inclined to come in and do what they do, and then they're the ones you end up dealing with, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, we had to change the curfew of the beach. It used to be midnight. Now it's 10 p.m. And that was way back due to an incident at State Beach. But unfortunately, we had to make that rule. And now the people, it's 2 hours less that they can enjoy the thing. But gets a little unruly down there for sure.
Yeah. But then we get these amazing days like the U.S. Open, and we built a city on the beach and have all this retail and dirt bikes and jumping and BMX bikes and skateboarders and a big surf contest, probably the biggest surf contest in the world, comes to Huntington Beach every year. And you have fond memories of the contest?
Yeah, for sure. Watching Brett Simpson win 2 years in a row.
So our local boy, local surfer, Brett Simpson, he won 2 years in a row against all odds. He was a underdog for sure, year one, and then even as the champion coming in, surfing against the Brazilians and the other world leaders. But he did it again. It was incredible. There was a lot of camaraderie from the city and the locals, and that was a big deal.
Huge deal. And then, Kanoa won it at one time. And I remember back in the day, too, just watching our surf heroes surf in Huntington. Tom Curran surfed there, Aki, all those guys, there's a lot of prep and event stuff that goes into putting on those events. Most people just come down and watch, and they're like, oh, cool. But man, weeks before and weeks after, setting up, tearing down, running the water. So the big thing for the lifeguards is it sounds silly, but like just keeping the area clear of non-competitors. It's a huge task, especially in the summer when there's, guess what, a south current coming from the south, coming right into the contest area. People, you can't swim, or boogie boarders drifting in and like getting in the way of Tom Curran. It can't happen. So we would be charged with keeping the area clear for 8 hours at a time.
And then would probably take everything you have in you, because there's always going to be that one or two jerk guys that feel that, what are you going to do? I'm going to surf anyway, and I don't care about this silly contest. And so there's the same cast of characters. Do you see the same kooky guy?
We used to. It's changed a lot. It's a lot easier now, I think, than it was before. But there would always be somebody pushing it, and then but we have the authority of arrest, and we have the HBPD, and we would deal with the situation, and then they get what's coming, kind of thing. But for the most part, it's just swimmers and bodyboarders drifting into the area. So as the current picks up, you just draw your line farther and farther to the south. So there's no way you can wait until they're right in front of you to go get them, or they're going to be in the contest area. So we just would draw the line at Tower 5, and you say, anybody comes past this line, you tell them to get out. And let's talk about the tower guards earning their, they probably burn like 10,000 calories a day, these kids.
The tower guards are in the water on a big day when there's surf, and we had a pretty consistent surf in Huntington Beach in the summertime. The tower guards are in and out of the water consistently, so they're pulling 10 plus rescues per person. They're in the water, out of the water, in the water, out of the water.
Yeah.
Either
Plus,
pulling people out or swimming out to warn them of a hazard that they're about ready to get into. There's a lot of preventative maintenance, right? So one of the things that is mind blowing here is the amount of people that come to the beach that get into the water on big hazardous days, and the virtual the virtual fact that very very if anyone has an incident that ends up with death in Huntington.
yeah, that's a huge stat and a real proud moment, not just for Huntington, but Newport, Laguna, Cal State parks. We routinely have 0 drownings a year. And that's the best stat number you can have is 0. And that's just due to the vigilance of the tower guards. It's just like one thing I learned too was like, not everybody, but everybody thinks they're a good swimmer, but everyone is not a good swimmer. And I realized, into my career that my idea of good swimming and the general public's idea of good swimming are 2 different things. So when you ask somebody, are you a good swimmer? And they say yes, that their bar is like treading water, not drowning is a good swimmer.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's true. Is like if you don't drown, you're pretty good, right? But my idea of good swimming is like your idea of good swimming. Put your head down, swim for 100 yards without stopping, and make progress. That's a good swimmer.
And regardless of how good of a swimmer you think you are, Mother Ocean's going to teach you another lesson, right? So waves, currents, undertow, people call it, but we call them rip currents, right? Those things are real and they're legitimate. And even a very seasoned swimmer and surfer like myself gets humbled on a regular basis out there. So
it's a huge humble. The ocean is a humbler, that's for sure. One of the things I would always see and feel bad about too would be like lifeguard tryouts every year. So we'd have these tryouts, 100 people would show up, and you'd look at the group and you'd be like, oh man, that guy's, and it is humbling, dude. They say go, the first event is a pier swim, just a simple pier swim around the pier and come in, 100 people on the line. They set the gun, and we make a lot of rescues at lifeguard tryouts.
People trying.
Oh, we make
Wow.
20 rescues at tryouts.
Wow.
And people just don't have the knowledge of what it takes. And so there could easily be 100 people at the line on the first event. And by the time the third event comes around, there's only 50 people standing there. And 20 of those people are like barely making it. So, it's a weeds it out.
Natural selection of weeding them out, right? Let's go to the further end of that spectrum. So there's a lifeguard event held every year that's a fundraiser for the lifeguards called the Mega, right?
The Mega.
So let's talk about the Mega. So just so everyone's clear here, this is a non-published event. It's done on the down low. There's a bunch of people that do it. And it's done usually on an overcast, cold morning in June-ish time frame, and give everybody an idea what's involved in the Mega.
The full name is the Mega Colossus. It's put on by the state lifeguards, Huntington State Lifeguards. Back in the day, they used to make all the rookies do the Mega. It was like you did it. Now they can't really say that, but they strongly suggest all the rookies do it. So they do these events throughout the summer, and they used to call them vitamins and mega vitamins. So every day we would train, right? Before work, 8:00, 7:00, you'd do a run, swim, run, or a swim or something. And it would all come to the middle of the summer, which it's usually in July on a weekday, 6 a.m., no entry fee, no trophies. And it's called the Mega Colossus. So it's a combination of all the mini vitamins that they would do. And it starts at River and it goes to Anderson Street. It's about an 8-mile run with 4 swims. So running northbound from River, first swim is at Newland, second swim is at the pier, third swim is the Tower 12 buoy, the state guards call it the Coast Guard buoy, and then the fourth swim is the Bolsa Main Tower buoy, and then finish at Anderson. So 8 miles of running, 2 miles of swimming, all done before 9:00 in the morning. And it's awesome because the reason it's so killer is you just show up and there could be 100 people on the line. I mean, it's a legit thing. I love it. And I had some running issues with my calf, but one of my goals, actually, I've done it probably about 15 times or something, but I want to try to do it again this summer.
As an old guy.
As an old guy, you do not see very many people over like 35 in that event. And they put your age in black marker on your calf, on the back of your calf. So when you're running down, it's a real community thing too. My buddy John Rogers put that thing on for years. They have donuts and fruit at the end and water, aid stations. And it's just a weird thing seeing 100 people running by in Speedos at 7:30 in the morning.
And it's the anticlimactic if you've ever been to a triathlon or a 10K or participated in a marathon where there's a lot of hoopla and ceremony and, you know, people cheering you on. It's not that. There's none of that. There's a bunch of guys doing this race, and then there's very little celebration at the end, and there's no awards, there's no trophies, there's no bragging rights. You just go home after. And so it's one of those things where the satisfaction's from within. The satisfaction is, I know that I did this. My peers know I did this with them. And I might have had some trash talking between a friend or two, but that's it. And that's a monumental event.
And then a lot of those kids, they finish and then they go to work for 8 hours that day.
Yeah.
One of my best ones was
just a workout.
Yeah,
just a morning workout.
Was getting a ride to River and then finishing at Anderson and walking across the street to the dock and going to work at 8 o'clock.
Going to work. Just another day on the job. Well, Eric, I appreciate you taking the time to break it down for us of what it is to be an ocean lifeguard and have a 35-year career. Congratulations on that. What a treat it must have been to drive that Crystaliner. I have reverence for that boat. I paddleboard out of Newport, and the beach there as the headquarters is where all the boats dock there. So I get to see all of your brethren out there in Newport on their Crystaliners, and not one of them have anything other than reverence themselves for those boats. Those things are incredible. When they fire up, they have a NASCAR kind of engine sound to them with two NASCAR-like engines in them. And so it's just thunder and sound and speed and agility, and they have sexy lines on them. And you're sitting out in the element, you know, getting sun. Just what a great career.
Yeah, I still remember my last day of work. My actual last day was in November, but it was a beautiful day, and I was in charge of running the boat program. So I was at the dock by myself a lot, just doing maintenance, you know. Especially when summer was over. But I remember my last day, I shined up my boat and I took it for a ride. You know, I'm like, we call them speed runs. You got to take them out and run them, which is really funny because, I mean, are you kidding? I'm gonna go for a ride. So I came out of the harbor. I went by Huntington. I went by the pier. I drove all the way down to Newport. I did a big loop, put it away. And then I walked away. I was
Shed
done.
a tear.
Yeah, for sure.
But you get a chance to get back out there on the boat every November with us, and you know, play safety with us, and you know, the level of professionalism that you and your crew run with is worthy of sharing with the world. And I want to make sure people realize the next time they see somebody in surf trunks carrying a buoy and lifeguard fins that there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of professionalism that goes into it. There's a full system in place here. There's a track record of public safety that's real, and they're doing their job. So don't give them shit at the beach, okay? Be nice to your lifeguards. Eric, thank you. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you back at the pool on Wednesday.
Oh yeah, you keep me coming back. That's for sure. It's not easy.
All right. Take care, people. Hope you enjoy. Hey, Mike here. Hope you liked this boardroom session. Please check back to our future sessions as we're recording a new one every month. If you want to reach out, look for me on LinkedIn or send me a note at mike@sidepath.com. That's Mike at sidepath.com.